He was never meant to be alone with the baby, and yet in the quiet of that late afternoon, he was the only one who stayed. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Somewhere warm, I hope. Because in a small weatherboard house on the edge of a quiet Australian suburb, the air had already begun to cool, carrying that faint scent of eucalyptus and dust that settles just before evening. The kind of stillness that feels harmless until it isn't. Inside, the light slipped gently through half-drawn curtains, painting long, soft shadows across the timber floor. A clock ticked on the wall, steady and indifferent. And in the center of it all, a crib. Small, white, still. Beside it stood Rex, a full-grown German shepherd, coat the color of burnt sand and shadow, muscles held tight beneath his fur like coiled rope. His ears were upright, alert, but it wasn't the posture of aggression. It was something older, something quieter, the kind of stillness you see in soldiers who have already decided what they're willing to face. 30 minutes earlier, the house had been different, warmer, alive. Emily Carter moved quickly through the kitchen, her bare feet soft against the floorboards, keys clinking faintly in her hand. "I'll only be gone a minute," she had whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The phone call had come suddenly. Urgent, but unclear. Just long enough to pull her out the door. Not long enough to think twice. Not long enough to question leaving Noah behind, asleep in his crib, with Rex watching from the corner of the room. Rex had been with them for nearly 3 years. Liam brought him home after his last deployment, a quiet return with no parade, no ceremony. Just a man, a dog, and a silence that followed them both through the doorway. Liam Carter, tall, broad-shouldered, sun-weathered skin, the faint outline of a tattoo wrapping along his right forearm, inked in the shape of a shepherd mid-stride, rarely spoke about what Rex had done overseas. He didn't need to. The way he looked at the dog said enough. Trust like that isn't taught. It survived. And Rex never left his side. Until now. The baby stirred. A soft, restless sound, barely more. Then a breath breaking the silence. Rex's head shifted instantly. Not fast. Not panicked. Just precise. His amber eyes fixed on the crib. Listening. Measuring. Waiting. The air felt different now. Thicker somehow. Outside, a magpie called once, sharp and distant, before the world returned to stillness. Rex took a single step forward. Then another. Slow. Controlled. The kind of movement that doesn't ask for attention, but earns it anyway. Noah's small hands twitched against the blanket. A faint whimper followed, fragile and uncertain, like something caught between sleep and waking. Rex lowered his head slightly, his body angling toward the crib, not looming, not threatening, guarding. There was a tension in him now, subtle but unmistakable. Not fear. Never fear. Instinct. Something beneath the surface, older than commands, older than training. The house remained quiet, but not empty. Not anymore. The light shifted again, just enough to deepen the shadows near the floor. Somewhere unseen, something moved, too soft to hear, too small to notice. But Rex noticed. His ears flicked once. His body stilled completely. Even his breathing slowed, measured and deliberate, as though the entire world had narrowed to a single point beneath that crib. Noah let out a sharper cry now, louder, searching, the kind of cry that demands comfort, that expects arms. But there were no arms. Only Rex. He stepped closer, close enough now that his shadow touched the edge of the crib, close enough that anyone looking in from the outside might misunderstand what they were seeing. A large dog, a vulnerable child, silence where there should be reassurance. But Rex didn't hesitate. He leaned in slightly, his nose hovering just above the wooden rail, not touching, not crossing that invisible line. Watching, waiting, ready. Outside, the wind shifted. A door down the street slammed faintly. And somewhere far off, tires rolled over asphalt, heading back toward a house that no longer felt quite as safe as it had just moments before. Rex does not move when the baby cries again, not because he does not hear it, but because something else has already claimed his full attention, something lower, quieter, hidden beneath the soft rhythm of the house. And in that moment the world narrows for him the way it once did in places far from here, where Liam taught him that danger does not always announce itself, that the most important threats are the ones you feel before you see. And now that instinct hums through him like a memory he never forgot. His muscles held steady, his weight balanced forward. every part of him listening not just to the sound of Noah's voice, but to the silence beneath it, the kind of silence that carries meaning, the kind that shifts ever so slightly when something moves where it should not. And there it is again, faint, almost nothing, a soft drag against timber, so subtle a human ear might miss it entirely. But Rex does not miss it. He never has. His ears tilt. Just once, his gaze dropping from the crib to the shadowed space below it. And for a second, he is completely still, not even his chest rising, as though time itself has paused to watch what he will do next. Noah's cry rises again, louder now, a thin thread of sound that trembles through the room, and Rex flicks his eyes back up, checking, always checking. The baby is safe for now, but the space beneath the crib is not empty, and that is enough. He steps sideways, slow and deliberate, placing himself between the crib and whatever waits below, not blocking Noah, but guarding him, always guarding, his body forming a quiet barrier. And there is something almost sacred in the way he stands there, not as an animal unsure of what to do, but as something that has already chosen, something that does not need permission to act. Outside, the sky has begun to dim, that soft Australian evening light turning gold then fading toward blue, and in the distance a car passes, tires humming briefly along the road. But inside the house nothing breaks the stillness except the baby's uneven breaths and that faint, shifting presence near the floor. Rex lowers his head slightly, his nose drawing in the air, scent layering over memory, dust, wood, the faint sweetness of baby powder, and beneath it all something colder, something that does not belong, and it sharpens him instantly, the way it once did when Liam would go quiet mid-step, when the world would hold its breath before something unseen revealed itself. Rex does not growl, not yet, because this is not about warning, this is about watching, about knowing. And so he waits, his tail still, his stance grounded, every muscle ready without tension, a kind of calm that comes from certainty. Noah shifts again, his small fingers curling, his cry softening into a restless whimper. And for a brief moment Rex glances back up, checking the rise and fall of the child's chest, counting without counting, making sure the rhythm continues. And then he returns his focus downward, because whatever is there is closer now. The silence has changed again, just enough, and in that subtle shift Rex steps forward half a pace, placing himself fully beside the crib, close enough that his shoulder brushes the wood. And from outside, from a window or a doorway, it would look wrong. It would look like a large dog pressing too near, too intent, too focused on something fragile. But inside this moment there is no confusion, only purpose, only that quiet line drawn between what is safe and what is not. Time stretches, seconds folding into something heavier, slower. And somewhere across town Emily grips the steering wheel tighter than she needs to, her thoughts unsettled for reasons she cannot quite name, a feeling that lingers just beneath awareness, the kind that makes you check the clock twice, the kind that whispers something is not quite right. Even when everything should be fine, she exhales, telling herself it is nothing, just a quick errand, just a minute longer. But her foot presses slightly harder on the accelerator anyway. Back in the house Rex shifts again, just enough to adjust his stance, his ears flicking once more as that near-silent movement returns, closer now, almost directly beneath the crib, and this time his body responds before thought, his head dipping lower, his weight shifting forward, ready but controlled, never reckless, because this is not chaos. This is precision, the kind Liam trusted with his life, the kind that does not act without reason. Noah's cry fades into a softer sound, a tired, uneven breath, and Rex remains where he is, a silent presence beside him, unmoving except for the smallest adjustments, watching, waiting, holding that invisible line. And in that quiet house, as the last light of day slips further away, it becomes clear that Rex is not simply near the baby. He is not curious, not confused, not misplaced. He is exactly where he needs to be, standing between something unseen and something that cannot defend itself. And he will not move. Not now. Not until whatever is hiding decides to reveal itself or leave. And either way, Rex will be there when it does. The room holds its breath in a way that no human would ever notice. But Rex feels it as clearly as a change in wind before a storm, a shift so slight it exists somewhere between sound and silence. And now it is no longer distant, no longer uncertain. It is here, directly beneath the crib, coiled in stillness that does not belong to rest but to waiting, and Rex lowers himself just a fraction more, not crouching, not retreating, but aligning, placing his body exactly where it needs to be, his shoulder brushing the crib again, his head angled downward, eyes locked on the dark space beneath where the last trace of light cannot reach. And in that narrow band of shadow something moves, not quickly, not with panic, but with the slow, deliberate motion of something that believes it has time. And that is what makes Rex shift, not fear, not aggression, but certainty, because time is the one thing he will not allow it to have. Noah lets out another soft cry, weaker now, drifting towards sleep, unaware of the thin line that has formed around him, unaware of the quiet decision unfolding beside him. And Rex glances up once more, just once, checking the baby's breath, the rise and fall steady enough to hold for now. And then he returns his gaze downward, and this time there is no hesitation at all, only focus, only that silent agreement between instinct and action. Outside, the sky has deepened into that soft blue-gray that settles over suburban streets just before night, the air cooling by a few degrees, the scent of damp earth beginning to lift from the garden, and somewhere down the road a dog barks once, distant, unaware, but inside this house the world has narrowed to a single point beneath a small wooden crib. Rex shifts his front paw slightly, placing it closer to the shadow, not striking, not lunging, but marking space, drawing a boundary that cannot be crossed. And for a moment everything stills again, the kind of stillness that feels almost unreal, as though the house itself is watching. And then there is movement, clearer now, a subtle ripple through the darkness, and Rex's ears tilt forward, his body tightening just enough to be ready, but not enough to lose control, because control is everything. Liam taught him that, not in words, but in the quiet repetition of trust, in the long hours where stillness meant survival, where patience meant the difference between harm and safety. And Rex carries that lesson now without needing to think, his breath slow, measured, his eyes unblinking, tracking that faint motion as it edges closer to the light. And Noah stirs again, a small hand lifting and falling against the blanket, his cry fading into a soft, tired sound. And Rex steps forward half a pace more, closing the distance, placing himself fully between the crib and whatever waits below. And from any other angle it would look wrong. It would look like a threat, a large animal too close, too intent, too still. But here, inside this moment, there is nothing accidental about his position, nothing uncertain about his purpose. And as the shadow beneath the crib shifts again, just enough to catch the faintest trace of light, Rex moves, not fast, not sudden, but precise, his head dipping lower, his body angling to block, to contain, to hold that invisible line. And the air seems to tighten around him, every second stretching, every small movement carrying weight. And somewhere across town Emily feels it again, that quiet unease pressing against her thoughts, stronger now, sharper, the kind that does not fade when ignored. Her grip on the steering wheel firming, her eyes flicking briefly to the clock on the dashboard, calculating distance without meaning to, her breath catching for no reason she can name, and she presses the accelerator just a little more, the car responding. With a soft surge forward, back in the house, Rex does not look away, not even for a heartbeat, because whatever is beneath that crib is no longer still. It is moving with purpose now, and Rex meets that movement with his own, stepping fully into place, closing every gap, leaving no path unguarded, his presence quiet but absolute. And in that silent standoff, with the last light of day fading from the room and the first hints of night settling in, one truth becomes clear in the way only instinct can reveal. Rex is not reacting, he is choosing, and he will hold this line for as long as it takes. The moment stretches until it no longer feels like time at all, only presence, only breath held between two outcomes, and Rex stands exactly where he must, not shifting, not retreating, his body forming a quiet wall beside the crib, his eyes fixed on that narrow seam of darkness where movement has become undeniable. And now the shape beneath the crib edges forward just enough to meet the dim light, not fully revealed, never fully clear, but enough to confirm what instinct already knew, enough to tell Rex that this is no longer something that will pass on its own. And so he adjusts again, not with urgency, but with intention, placing one paw slightly ahead, angling his shoulder to close the final space between the crib and the floor, his presence filling the gap where danger might otherwise reach, and Noah stirs softly above him. Unaware, his breathing uneven but steady. A small fragile rhythm that Rex checks again without looking, because he already knows, because he can feel it in the air, in the way the room carries sound, in the way everything aligns around what matters. Outside the house the evening deepens, streetlights flicker on one by one, casting pale halos across quiet footpaths, and somewhere a neighbor's screen door creaks open then shuts, the ordinary sounds of a world that continues without knowing what is unfolding here. And inside the room Rex lowers his head further, his nose almost level with the edge of shadow, his breath slow and controlled, never rushed, never careless, because every movement must count. And beneath the crib the unseen presence shifts. Again, this time closer to the open space, testing, uncertain now, as though it senses the barrier that has formed, and Rex meets that uncertainty with stillness, a kind of patience that does not invite, does not provoke, only holds, only contains, his ears angled forward, catching every faint vibration, every soft scrape, every subtle change that might signal movement. And in that quiet exchange there is no noise, no clash, no chaos, only a silent negotiation of space, of boundaries, of intent. And Rex does not yield even a fraction, because yielding is not an option, not here, not with something so small and defenseless behind him. And across town Emily's unease sharpens into something she can no longer ignore, her thoughts no longer drifting but focused, her chest tightening with a quiet urgency that rises without explanation. She glances at the road ahead, the distance shortening, the familiar turn just meters away now, and she slows only enough to take it safely before pressing forward again, her breath shallow, her mind replaying that last glance at the crib, that brief hesitation she brushed aside, and now it returns heavier, louder, as though something inside her is calling her back faster than reason allows. Back in the house Rex remains fixed in place, his entire being narrowed to this single purpose, and as the shadow beneath the crib shifts once more, he responds, not with force, but with presence, stepping just enough to block, to redirect, to keep whatever it is from finding a path forward. And there is a moment then, brief but unmistakable, where everything stills again, as though both sides have reached a point of understanding, and Rex does not break that moment. He does not rush it, he holds it, because he knows that sometimes stillness is the strongest move of all, and Noah exhales a soft, tired breath, his small body settling deeper into sleep, and Rex's eyes flick upward for the briefest second, confirming, always confirming, before returning to the space below, because that is where the line is drawn, that is where his duty lives now, not in commands spoken aloud, not in training exercises repeated on open ground, but here, in this quiet room, in this unseen standoff, where no one is watching and no one will know what almost happened, and yet he stays, because staying is what matters, staying is what protects, and the minutes pass in that suspended stillness until the faintest sound reaches from outside, tires slowing on gravel, an engine softening, the familiar cadence of a car returning, and Rex hears it, registers it, but does not turn, does not break his focus. Because until the door opens, until someone else steps into this space, this remains his responsibility, and so he holds his ground, unwavering, silent, steady, as the house waits on the edge of something unseen, and the last trace of daylight fades completely into night. The sound of the car outside does not break the silence inside the room, it only deepens it, as if the world beyond the walls is drawing closer, while this small space remains suspended in something unseen, and Rex hears the tires settle against the gravel, hears the engine quiet, hears the faint metallic click of a door opening somewhere beyond the front yard. But he does not turn, not even slightly, because the line he holds has not yet been released, and beneath the crib the presence shifts. Again, slower now, uncertain, as though it has begun to understand that the space it once had is no longer open to it. And Rex responds not with movement, but with stillness sharpened into intent, his body angled perfectly between the crib and the floor, his head low, his eyes fixed, and in that stillness there is no doubt, no hesitation, only a quiet, unwavering refusal to allow anything past him. Noah breathes softly above, his small chest rising and falling in a rhythm that has finally settled into sleep. And Rex listens to that rhythm the way he once listened to Liam's breath in the dark, measuring, confirming, anchoring himself to it. Because as long as that breath continues, his purpose remains unchanged. Outside footsteps move quickly now, gravel crunching under hurried steps, the faint jingle of keys, the door opening faster than it should, and Emily's presence enters the house like a shift in air pressure. Her breath uneven, her voice calling out softly at first, then sharper, Noah, the word catching in her throat as she moves through the hallway. And Rex hears her. Of course he hears her, but he does not respond. Not yet, because something beneath the crib moves again, testing once more, and Rex lowers his head just a fraction further, closing every possible gap, his body now fully shielding the space where the unseen might try to pass. And then the light in the room changes as Emily reaches the doorway, her hand pushing it open, her silhouette framed for a split second against the hallway light before she steps inside. And what she sees stops her breath completely. Rex, large and unmoving, pressed close beside the crib, his head low, his body tense in a way she has never seen before. Too still, too focused, too close to her child. And for that one suspended moment, everything she fears rushes in at once, her heart lurching, her voice breaking as she calls his name. Rex, sharp, urgent, filled with something between command and panic, and Rex hears it. But he does not move, because the moment has not passed, because the space beneath the crib is not yet safe, and Emily takes a step forward, then another, her breath quick, her hands trembling slightly as she tries to make sense of what she is seeing, the shadows, the stillness, the distance between what she expects and what stands before her. And for a fraction of a second she hesitates, caught between instinct to protect and the uncertainty of what is actually happening. And then, her eyes drop, following Rex's line of focus, down toward the floor, toward the space beneath the crib, and there, just at the edge of shadow, something shifts, faint but undeniable, and the meaning of the moment changes completely, not in a burst, not in a dramatic revelation, but in a quiet, dawning understanding that settles over her like a sudden stillness, and Rex finally moves, not away from the crib, not toward her, but slightly forward, just enough to ensure that whatever is beneath remains contained, his body still forming that barrier, his presence still absolute. And Emily stops where she is, her breath catching again, but this time not from fear of him, but from the realization of what he has been doing all along. And the room feels different now, not safe yet, but no longer uncertain, the truth sitting quietly in the space between them, unspoken but clear, and Rex remains exactly where he has been, holding that line, waiting, not for praise, not for relief, but for the moment when the world will finally catch up to what he has already understood, and outside the night settles fully over the street, the last of the light gone, leaving only the soft glow from inside the house where one silent decision has already made all the difference. Emily does not move for a long moment, not because she cannot, but because something deeper than fear has taken hold, something quieter, heavier, the kind of understanding that arrives slowly and changes everything once it settles, and her eyes remain fixed on the narrow space beneath the crib where that faint movement lingers, barely visible, yet impossible to ignore, and Rex stands exactly as he has been, his body still forming that living barrier, his presence steady, unshaken, as though he has already resolved the outcome long before she stepped into the room. And in that silence there is no chaos, no panic, only a tension that feels controlled, contained, as if the moment itself is waiting for her to see it clearly, and she exhales, slow and careful, her voice softer now, no longer sharp, no longer afraid of him. Rex, she says again, but this time it is different, quieter, almost a question, and Rex flicks his ears at the sound, acknowledging, but he does not turn, not yet, because the space beneath the crib still holds something unresolved, and Emily takes another step forward, slower this time, her movements measured, her breath shallow but steadying as her mind begins to piece together what her eyes are showing her. And the room feels smaller now, more focused, every detail sharper, the faint hum of the house, the soft rhythm of Noah's breathing, the low, controlled stillness of Rex beside him. And then there it is again, that subtle shift beneath the crib. Clearer now in the angle of light, a shape moving just enough to confirm what instinct has already whispered, and Emily's breath catches, not in panic, but in recognition, because this is not a threat from Rex. This is something else entirely, something he has been holding back, something he has refused to let near her child. And Rex moves then, just slightly, a controlled adjustment forward, not aggressive, not sudden, but purposeful, reinforcing that invisible boundary one last time, and the movement beneath the crib responds, retreating, not with noise or struggle, but with that same quiet motion, slipping back toward the darker edge of shadow, away from the line Rex has drawn, and the tension in the room shifts with it, not gone, but easing, as though the balance has tipped just enough towards safety, and Emily feels it, that subtle release, that change in the air that tells her the danger, whatever it was, is no longer pressing forward, and her shoulders lower just slightly, her breath deepening as the realization settles fully into place, and she looks at Rex, really looks at him now, not as a large dog too close to her baby, but as something else entirely, something steady, something intentional, something that chose to stand where he did and remain there without hesitation. And in that moment, the fear she carried into the room dissolves into something quieter, something heavier, something that feels almost like awe, and Rex finally shifts his gaze, lifting his head just enough to look at her, his amber eyes calm, steady, as if asking nothing, explaining nothing, simply acknowledging that she is here now, that the responsibility he carried alone is no longer his to hold by himself. And Emily takes another step forward, this time without hesitation, her hand reaching the edge of the crib, her eyes flicking quickly to Noah, confirming, always confirming, the rise and fall of his small chest, the softness of his sleep, untouched, unharmed, and her fingers grip the wood gently, grounding herself in the reality of what she sees. And then she looks back at Rex, her voice barely above a whisper. You stayed. And the words are not a command, not even a statement, but something closer to understanding, and Rex remains still, his posture easing just slightly now that the immediate threat has withdrawn. His body no longer as tightly coiled, but still alert, still present, as though he will not fully relax until every part of the room is certain again. And outside the house the night continues as it always does, quiet, ordinary, unaware of the silent line that was held within these walls, unaware of the choice that was made without witness or recognition. And inside, Emily kneels slowly beside the crib, her hand resting lightly on Noah's blanket, her other hand hovering for a moment before reaching toward Rex, not to command, not to pull him away, but simply to touch, to connect, her fingers brushing the fur along his neck. And Rex does not move away, he does not lean in, he simply remains, accepting the contact the same way he accepted the responsibility, without expectation, without need. And in that quiet, shared stillness, the truth settles fully, not spoken, not announced, but understood in the way only moments like this can be, that sometimes what looks like danger is the very thing standing between you and it. And sometimes the one who says nothing is the one who never left. The room settles into a different kind of quiet now, not the tense stillness from before, but something softer, something that feels earned, as if the air itself has exhaled after holding too much for too long. And Rex remains beside the crib, though the edge has left his posture, his body no longer drawn tight like a line under strain, but not fully relaxed either, because habit does not fade in a single moment. And instinct does not release its grip all at once, and Emily stays where she is, kneeling close, her hand still resting lightly on Noah's blanket, feeling the warmth, the steady rise and fall, grounding herself in what is real, what is safe, what has been protected without her even knowing it needed to be. And she looks again at Rex, really seeing him now, not just as the dog Liam brought home, not just as the quiet shadow that moved through their days, but as something shaped by moments she will never fully understand. Moments that taught him to stand still when everything inside might urge movement, moments that taught him to choose patience over reaction, and she notices the small details she has overlooked before. The way his ears remain slightly forward even now. The way his eyes track the edges of the room without turning his head. The way his breathing, though calm, never loses its awareness. And it strikes her then, quietly but firmly, that he did not simply stay because he was told to. He stayed because leaving was never an option, and outside a soft breeze moves through the trees, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves and the distant hum of passing cars, ordinary sounds that feel strangely distant compared to the stillness inside. And Emily shifts slightly, rising just enough to lean over the crib, her fingers brushing gently across Noah's cheek, a small, careful touch that draws no response beyond the continuation of his sleep, and she lets out a breath she did not realize she was holding, long and slow, her shoulders easing as the last traces of tension begin to dissolve. And behind her, Rex shifts his weight for the first time in what feels like hours, a subtle movement. One step back, not retreating, but repositioning now that the immediate need has passed, and Emily hears it, turns slightly, her eyes meeting his again, and there is something unspoken there, something that does not need language, a quiet acknowledgement of what has just happened, and she reaches out again, this time more certain, her hand resting against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth beneath his coat, the steady presence that did not waver, and Rex accepts it as he did before, without leaning into it, without pulling away, simply allowing it, as though connection is not something he seeks, but something he understands when it is offered. And for a moment they remain like that, both grounded in the same space, both aware of the same truth that does not need to be spoken aloud. And then from the front of the house comes the faint sound of another car, slower this time, more familiar, and Emily's head turns slightly, listening, recognizing. And Rex hears it too. Of course he does, his ears flicking once, his body subtly shifting again, not into tension, but into readiness of a different kind, the kind that anticipates arrival rather than threat. And a few seconds later the sound of the front door opens, steady, unhurried, followed by footsteps that carry a different weight, measured, grounded, the kind that belongs to someone who has walked through places where noise means danger and silence means something worse. And Liam's presence enters the house without announcement, just a quiet crossing of threshold into home, and he pauses for a fraction of a second in the hallway, sensing something in the air, something not quite right. But not wrong either, something changed, and then he steps toward the room, his gaze already narrowing slightly, not in alarm, but in awareness, and when he reaches the doorway, he stops, taking in the scene in a single glance. Emily beside the crib, Noah asleep, and Rex standing just off to the side, not restless, not guilty, simply present. And for a brief moment Liam says nothing, because he does not need to ask, not yet, not when the room itself already holds the answer, and his eyes move to Rex, lingering there, reading the posture, the stillness, the subtle cues that most would miss, and something in his expression shifts, not dramatically, but enough, a quiet recognition, a soldier understanding another without words, and Emily looks up at him, her voice soft, steady now. He stayed. And Liam nods once, slowly, as though that is all that needs to be said, as though the rest has already been understood, and Rex remains where he is, neither seeking attention nor avoiding it, simply existing in the aftermath of a choice that needed no witness. And the room holds that moment gently, not with tension, not with fear, but with a quiet kind of grace that settles in when something important has happened and no one needs to explain it. And outside the night continues on, unchanged, while inside 3 lives move forward, each carrying the same silent truth, that sometimes protection does not arrive with noise or warning, but stands quietly where it is needed and refuses to leave. For a long moment no one moves, not because they cannot, but because the room itself feels like it is holding something sacred, something that cannot be rushed or broken without losing its meaning. And Liam steps fully into the doorway, his boots quiet against the timber floor, his presence steady, grounded in a way that fills the space without disturbing it, and his eyes move once more from Emily to the crib, then back to Rex, taking in every detail the way he was trained to, not searching for danger now, but reading what has already passed. And Rex meets that look with the same calm, he has held all along, not seeking approval, not explaining, simply present, and in that silent exchange, something passes between them, something older than words, something built on trust that was earned far from this quiet house. And Liam exhales slowly, a breath that carries both relief and understanding. And he steps closer, his hand lowering slightly as if to reach for Rex, but stopping just short, not out of hesitation, but out of respect, because he knows better than most that a moment like this does not need to be interrupted. It needs to be acknowledged, and Emily watches him, her eyes softer now, no longer searching, no longer uncertain, but grounded in what she has seen, what she has come to understand in the space of a few quiet seconds. And she speaks again, her voice low, steady. There was something under the crib, and Liam nods once, not surprised, not alarmed, just confirming what he already read in Rex's stance, and his gaze drops briefly to the floor, scanning the shadowed space, not with urgency, but with practiced awareness, and whatever had been there is no longer pressing forward. The air no longer carries that subtle tension, that quiet edge, and Liam straightens slightly, his shoulders easing as he reaches the same conclusion Rex reached moments ago, that the line has held, that the danger has passed. And Noah shifts softly in his sleep, a small movement that draws all their attention for a heartbeat, and then settles again into stillness, untouched by what unfolded around him. And Emily lets out a faint breath that almost becomes a laugh, not from humor, but from relief, so deep it feels unfamiliar. And she brushes a strand of hair back from her face, her hand still trembling slightly as the last of the tension leaves her body, and Liam steps closer. Now, his hand finally resting against Rex's neck, firm and steady, not a reward, not a command, just a quiet connection, and Rex accepts it without change, his posture easing just enough to show that the watch has ended, that the moment he held so tightly has now been released. And for the first time since Emily entered the room, he shifts fully, stepping back from the crib, not because he is told, but because it is no longer necessary to stand there. And that small movement carries more meaning than anything spoken, because it shows that the choice has passed, that the duty has been fulfilled. And Liam watches him closely, a faint nod following, the kind that would go unnoticed by anyone else, but not by Rex. And outside the night settles deeper, the air cooling further, the quiet hum of distant traffic blending into the background of a world that continues without pause. And inside the house something has changed, something subtle but lasting, something that will not be spoken about in dramatic words or retold with grand detail, but will live in the way Emily looks at Rex from this moment forward, in the way Liam's hand lingers a second longer than usual when it rests against his shoulder, and in the way Rex returns to his place near the edge of the room, not seeking attention, not expecting anything, simply existing in the quiet space he has always occupied. And Emily stands slowly, her hand still resting lightly on the crib as she looks between Liam and Rex. Her voice soft, almost to herself. I thought. But the sentence fades before it can finish, because what she thought no longer matters, and what remains is something far more important, something she now understands without needing to say it. And Liam glances at her briefly, his expression calm, knowing, and he gives the slightest shake of his head, not dismissing her fear, but releasing it, letting it fall away without weight. And the room settles into a gentle quiet once more, not empty, but full in a different way, full of something that lingers just beneath the surface, a quiet kind of grace that does not demand recognition, does not need explanation, only presence. And as the seconds pass and nothing more unfolds, the house returns to its ordinary rhythm, the clock ticking softly, the faint creak of timber adjusting to the night air, the steady breathing of a child who never knew how close the line had been drawn. And in that stillness, with no witness but those who were there, one truth remains, not spoken, not written, but understood in the quiet space between them, that sometimes the ones who stand closest to danger are not the ones we should fear, but the ones who refuse to let it reach us at all. The house breathes again, slowly, quietly, as if nothing remarkable has happened, as if the walls have not just witnessed a moment that will never be spoken of beyond this room. And yet something lingers in the air, something that does not fade with the passing of seconds, something that settles deeper the longer it is left undisturbed. and Liam remains where he stands for a moment longer, his hand still resting lightly against Rex's neck, feeling the steady warmth beneath his palm, the calm that follows a decision already made and carried through without hesitation. And then he lowers his hand, not pulling away but simply letting it fall, trusting that what needed to be done has already been done, and Rex steps back another pace, his posture now fully relaxed, though not careless, never careless, his ears still catching the quiet rhythm of the house, his eyes still tracing the edges of the room out of habit more than need. And Emily moves slowly around the crib, her steps soft, deliberate, as if she is careful not to disturb something fragile that still hangs in the space. Not the baby, but the memory of what just passed. And she glances once more beneath the crib, not searching anymore, only confirming what she already feels, that whatever was there has gone, retreated, removed by a presence that refused to yield. And she straightens, her hand resting against the wooden rail for a moment longer than necessary, grounding herself, anchoring to the quiet certainty that her child is safe. And across from her Liam shifts slightly, his gaze still calm, his expression unchanged, but there is a softness there now, something that was not present when he first stepped through the door, something that comes from understanding without needing explanation. And he looks at Rex again, not with surprise, not with praise, but with recognition, the kind that does not need to be spoken aloud, because it already exists between them. And Rex meets that look briefly before turning his head slightly, not away, but outward, as if returning to his place in the room, the place he has always occupied, neither center nor edge, but somewhere in between, always aware, always present. And the seconds pass gently now, without tension, without weight, the kind of quiet that feels natural again. And Emily lets out another slow breath, this one deeper, fuller, her shoulders lowering as the last of the unease leaves her body, and she steps toward Liam, her voice soft, steady. I almost, but again the words do not finish, because they no longer need to, and Liam gives a small nod, not dismissing the thought, but acknowledging it without letting it linger, and he glances once more at Noah, watching the slow rise and fall of the small chest, the calm that remained untouched by everything that unfolded. And then he turns slightly, moving toward the window, his eyes scanning outside briefly, a habit that has followed him home from places far away, confirming the ordinary, confirming that the world beyond the glass continues as it should. And satisfied, he steps back, the room now fully settled into its evening rhythm, and Rex lowers himself quietly onto the floor near the wall, not collapsing, not resting completely, but easing into a position that allows him to remain aware without effort, his body aligned in that same quiet readiness that has become second nature. And Emily watches him for a moment, really watches him, seeing not just the shape of him, not just the familiar presence, but the choice he made when no one was there to see it, when no one was there to ask it of him. And something in her expression shifts, not dramatically, but enough to carry meaning, a quiet change that will follow her long after this night fades into memory. And she steps closer once more, her hand brushing lightly along Rex's back as she passes, not testing, not uncertain, but certain now in a way she was not before. And Rex does not react beyond a slight flick of his ear, acknowledging the touch without needing to respond, because there is nothing left to prove, nothing left to hold. And outside the night deepens further, the air cooling by a few degrees, the scent of earth and leaves drifting faintly through the open window, and the house settles into its familiar sounds, the clock marking time, the soft creak of timber, the distant hum of the world. Beyond and inside, three lives continue forward, unchanged on the surface, but quietly altered beneath it, shaped by a moment that will never be fully explained, only remembered in fragments, in glances, in small gestures that carry more weight than words ever could. And in that quiet, with nothing more unfolding, nothing more needed, the truth remains, simple and steady, that sometimes the most important things are done without witness, without recognition, and yet they are the ones that matter most. The night settles fully now, not with silence, but with a kind of gentle presence that wraps itself around the house, soft and steady, as though everything that needed to happen has already passed, and what remains is simply the quiet continuation of life, and Liam moves toward the kitchen without hurry, his steps measured, his mind already placing the moment behind him the way he has learned to do with things that matter too much to hold too tightly. And Emily lingers by the crib for a while. Longer, watching Noah sleep, her eyes tracing the small details she once took for granted. The way his fingers curl slightly against the blanket, the faint movement of his lips as he breathes, the soft rise and fall that now feels like something precious beyond words, and she reaches down to adjust the blanket gently, tucking it just enough to feel certain, to feel that she has done something, even though she knows the truth of what kept him safe had nothing to do with her in that moment. And across the room, Rex remains where he has settled, his body still, his breathing slow, his presence no longer carrying that sharp edge of readiness, but not fully surrendered to rest either, because for him rest is never complete. It is always a state of awareness softened, never removed, and his eyes half close, not in sleep, but in that quiet balance between watch and stillness, and the house hums gently around them. The refrigerator in the distance, the faint creak of cooling timber, the distant sound of a car passing along the road outside, and it all feels ordinary again, as though the moment has folded itself into memory already, leaving only its imprint behind. And Emily finally steps back from the crib, her movements slower now, more deliberate, and she walks toward the doorway where Liam stands for a moment, watching her approach, his expression calm, steady, and she pauses beside him, not speaking at first, because there is nothing urgent left to say, nothing that needs to be explained, and when she does speak, her voice is quiet, almost thoughtful. He knew. And Liam nods once, his gaze drifting briefly back toward the room, toward Rex, toward the space that no longer holds what it once did. And he replies simply, he always does. And there is no pride in the words, no exaggeration, only a statement of fact shaped by years of knowing, years of trusting something that does not need to be questioned. And Emily exhales softly, leaning slightly against the doorframe, her body finally releasing the last of its tension, and she glances back once more at Rex, her eyes softer than before, not searching, not uncertain, but understanding, and Rex senses it. Without looking, the shift in her presence, the absence of fear, and though he does not move, something in his posture eases just a fraction more, as though even that unspoken change matters in a way that does not need to be acknowledged, and time moves quietly forward, the minutes slipping by without weight, without urgency, and eventually Liam turns, stepping into the kitchen, the sound of water running briefly breaking the stillness, the small, ordinary tasks of evening beginning to take shape again, and Emily follows after a moment, leaving the bedroom door slightly ajar, not out of worry, but out of habit, a quiet connection maintained between spaces, and Rex remains where he is for a while. Longer, listening, always listening, the rhythm of the house settling into something familiar, something safe, and after a time he shifts, rising slowly, not because he needs to, but because the moment has fully passed, and he moves toward the doorway, pausing briefly to glance once more at the crib, at the small form resting peacefully within it, and then he steps out into the hallway, his movement silent, his presence blending once more into the quiet flow of the home, and as he passes by, Liam, a hand reaches down briefly, brushing against his shoulder, a simple gesture, unspoken, but filled with meaning, and Rex accepts it without pause, continuing on, settling near the edge of the living room where he can see both the front door and the hallway, the place he has always chosen, the place that allows him to remain aware without needing to be close. And the night deepens further, the air cooling, the sounds outside fading into a distant hum, and inside the house everything returns to its ordinary shape. Dinner prepared, lights dimmed, voices low and calm, and yet beneath it all something remains, something that will not fade with sleep or time, something that will stay in the quiet understanding between them, shaping the way they see, the way they trust, the way they remember, and in that stillness, with no need for words, the truth rests gently in the space they share, that sometimes the most important things are not seen until after they have already been done. And sometimes the one who stands closest is the one who never needed to be asked to stay. The house slips deeper into the night, not abruptly, but in layers, as if each minute gently folds over the last, softening the edges of everything that came before. And in the living room, Rex lies near the edge of the space, exactly where he can see the front door, the hallway, and the faint spill of light from the kitchen, his body still, his breathing slow, but his awareness never fully dimmed, because for him awareness is not effort, it is existence, and from the kitchen comes the quiet rhythm of water running again, the soft clink of a glass placed on the bench, the low murmur of Liam's voice as he speaks. Not loudly, not urgently, just enough to fill the space with something steady, something grounding, and Emily answers him in the same tone, her voice softer than usual, not from weakness, but from a kind of reflection that is not yet settled, and though their words are simple, ordinary things about the evening, about food, about small tasks, there is something beneath them, something unspoken that shapes the way they speak, the pauses between sentences, the way their voices carry a little more care than before, and Rex listens without turning his head, the sounds mapping quietly in his mind, confirming the rhythm of the home, the absence of anything that does not belong, and for a while nothing changes, the night holds steady, the air cools by another degree, and outside a distant wind moves through the trees, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves and the distant call of a night bird. And inside the lights dim slightly as Liam reaches for the switch, not to darken the house, but to soften it, to match the hour, and Emily returns briefly to the bedroom, her steps quiet, her presence calm, and she pauses at the doorway, looking in once more at Noah, still asleep, still untouched by everything that unfolded, and she watches him for a moment longer than necessary, her eyes tracing the same small details again, not out of worry, but out of a quiet gratitude that she does not yet know how to express. And Rex senses her return, not through sight, but through the subtle shift in the air, the change in sound, and he lifts his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge, his gaze turning toward the hallway for a brief second before settling again, and Emily steps back into the room, her hand brushing lightly along the wall as she passes, grounding herself in the familiar, and she pauses near Rex, her eyes resting on him for a moment, and there is no hesitation now, no uncertainty, only a quiet understanding that has taken root, and she kneels slightly, not fully, just enough to lower herself closer, her hand resting gently against his shoulder once more, and this time Rex leans into it, only slightly, just enough to show that he recognizes the gesture, that he accepts it, and then he settles again, his head lowering back to the floor, his eyes half closing, not in sleep, but in that calm awareness that has become his resting state, and Emily rises slowly, her breath steady, her expression softer than it has been all evening, and she moves back toward the kitchen where Liam stands, his posture relaxed, his movements unhurried, and she joins him without words at first, simply standing beside him, sharing the same quiet space, and after a moment she speaks, her voice low, almost thoughtful. "I did not see it." And Liam glances at her briefly, not questioning, not correcting, just listening, and she continues, "I only saw him." And the words hang there for a second, carrying more meaning than they first appear to, and Liam nods once, slowly, as if that is enough, as if that is all that needs to be understood, and he replies quietly, "That is what most people see." And there is no judgment in his voice, no criticism, only a simple truth. And Emily exhales softly, her shoulders easing further, and she looks back toward the living room, toward Rex, and this time her gaze lingers not with uncertainty, but with something deeper, something closer to respect, and the night continues on around them, steady and unchanged, the clock ticking, the faint hum of appliances, the distant sounds of the world outside fading further into the background, and in that quiet, with nothing more unfolding, the house settles into a kind of peace that feels earned, not given, a peace shaped by a moment that required no witness, no recognition, only presence and choice. And as the minutes pass and the night deepens, one thing becomes clear in the stillness that remains, that sometimes understanding does not arrive in the moment itself, but in the quiet that follows, when the fear has passed and the truth has room to be seen for what it was all along. The night grows quieter in a way that feels complete, not empty, as if the house itself has settled into a rhythm that no longer carries the weight of what came before, and the soft glow of the lights casts long, gentle shadows across the walls, turning familiar spaces into something calmer, something almost reflective. And Liam leans slightly against the kitchen counter, his posture relaxed but never careless, his eyes drifting occasionally toward the hallway as if checking without needing to move. And Emily stands beside him, her hands resting lightly on the edge of the bench, her fingers still, her thoughts slower now, no longer racing, no longer trying to catch up to something already past, but instead sitting with it, letting it settle in its own time. And neither of them speaks for a while, not because there is nothing to say, but because what remains between them does not require words. And in the living room, Rex remains where he has chosen to rest, his body angled toward the front of the house, his presence quiet, steady, the same as it has always been. And yet something about it feels different now, not because he has changed, but because he has been seen, truly seen, in a way that had not happened before. And that subtle shift exists not in him, but in the way Emily's gaze returns to him every so often, softer, more certain, carrying a quiet recognition that lingers without needing to be expressed. And the house continues its gentle rhythm, the clock ticking softly, the faint hum of electricity in the walls, the occasional distant sound of a car passing along the street, all of it blending into a background that feels steady and safe. And after a time, Liam reaches for a glass, fills it slowly with water, the sound simple and grounding, and he offers it to Emily without a word, and she accepts it with a small nod, her fingers brushing his briefly, a quiet exchange that mirrors the unspoken understanding that has settled between them. And she takes a sip, her breath evening out further, her shoulders loosening as the last traces of tension leave her body, and she glances again toward the living room, toward Rex, and this time her gaze lingers a little longer, not searching, not questioning, but acknowledging. And she speaks quietly, almost as if she is thinking aloud. I did not trust what I saw. And Liam listens, his expression unchanged, steady, and she continues, I trusted what I feared. And the words fall gently into the space between them. Not heavy, not dramatic, but true. And Liam nods once, a slow, measured movement, and he replies just as quietly, fear is loud. And he pauses for a moment before adding, but truth is patient. And Emily lets out a soft breath at that, her eyes lowering briefly as the meaning settles, not as something new, but as something recognized, something she has just experienced without knowing how to name it. And she looks back toward Rex again, her expression calm, grounded, and there is no hesitation now, no shadow of doubt, only a quiet certainty that feels steady and real. And Rex, sensing nothing more than the familiar presence of the people he knows, remains still, his awareness softened but not gone, his body at ease in the way it can only be when everything is as it should be. And after a while, Liam steps away from the counter, moving through the living room with the same quiet confidence he carries in all things, his hand brushing lightly against Rex's back as he passes. Not stopping, not drawing attention, just a simple gesture. And Rex acknowledges it with the faintest shift of his head, his eyes opening briefly before settling again. And Liam continues on, checking the front door, ensuring it is secure, a habit that never leaves him. And then he turns off the last of the unnecessary lights, leaving only a soft glow that keeps the house gentle rather than dark. And Emily follows shortly after, pausing once more at the edge of the living room, her gaze resting on Rex for a final moment before she speaks, her voice quiet but clear, thank you. And the words are not directed with expectation, not spoken to be heard in any particular way, but simply offered, because they need to be, because they carry something that cannot remain unspoken. And Rex does not react beyond a small flick of his ear, the same as before, the same as always, because he does not require thanks. He does not act for it. And yet the moment holds its meaning all the same. And Emily turns then, moving toward the bedroom, her steps light, her presence calm, and Liam follows after a moment, the house settling further into the quiet of night. And Rex remains where he is, his body still, his breathing slow, his awareness gently resting over the space he watches. And outside, the world continues on without pause, the wind moving softly through the trees, the distant hum of life beyond the walls. And inside, nothing more happens, nothing more is needed, because what mattered has already taken place. and what remains is simply the quiet understanding that follows, steady, patient, and real. The house drifts into the deepest part of night, where sound softens, and even the smallest movement feels distant, and Rex remains where he is settled, his body stretched along the floor, his head resting low but never fully surrendered to sleep. Because for him sleep is never complete, it is always a quiet agreement with the world that he will listen even as he rests. And the air carries that gentle coolness of an Australian night, slipping through the edges of the house, settling into the timber, into the fabric of everything. And in the bedroom, Noah sleeps on, undisturbed, his small breath steady, his presence untouched by what is already past. And Emily lies nearby, though her eyes are not fully closed, her mind still moving slowly through the memory of the evening, not with fear anymore, but with a quiet replay of understanding, each detail returning not as a threat, but as something clearer, something calmer. And she sees it again in her thoughts, Rex standing beside the crib, still, unwavering, not as something to fear, but as something that refused to move. And that image settles differently now, no longer sharp, no longer frightening, but steady, almost gentle in its meaning. And beside her, Liam rests more easily, his breathing slow, his presence grounded in a way that comes from knowing when something is finished, when something has been handled without needing to be spoken about. And in the living room, Rex shifts slightly, not because something has changed, but because time moves forward, and his body follows it naturally, his ears flicking once at a distant sound, a car passing far down the street, the faint hum of tires against asphalt, and then stillness again, the kind that holds without pressure, and minutes pass into hours without interruption. The night deepening, and then slowly beginning its quiet turn toward morning, the air cooling just a little more before it will rise again with the sun, and somewhere outside a bird calls softly, early, unaware that the sky has not yet begun to lighten, and Rex lifts his head slightly at the sound, his eyes opening just enough to take in the room, the hallway, the faint outline of the front door, and everything remains as it should be. And he lowers his head again, not fully asleep, but at ease, the kind of ease that comes only when nothing is out of place. And in the bedroom, Emily finally lets her eyes close fully, her breath settling into a deeper rhythm, the last of her thoughts quieting as the understanding she has reached no longer needs to be processed. It simply exists now, steady and certain, and the hours pass without disturbance, without change, until the first light of morning begins to touch the edges of the windows, soft and pale, turning the darkness into something lighter, something new. And Rex senses it before it fully arrives, the subtle shift in light, the faint change in the air, and he rises slowly, stretching once, his body moving with quiet precision, and he walks toward the hallway, his steps silent, his presence unchanged, and he pauses briefly at the doorway to the bedroom, not entering, not disturbing, simply checking, as he always does. And Noah still sleeps, Emily rests. Liam remains steady beside her, and everything is as it should be. And Rex turns away then, moving back toward his place, the house waking slowly around him, the first signs of morning beginning to take shape. And there is no trace of what once stood beneath the crib, no sign of the line that was held, no evidence of the choice that was made. Only the quiet continuation of life as it always appears, ordinary, simple, unchanged on the surface, and yet beneath it something remains. Something that will not fade with the light, something that will stay in the way. Emily looks at Rex when she wakes, in the way Liam's hand rests on him a moment longer as he passes, in the way Rex continues as he always has, without expectation, without need for recognition, simply present, simply steady. And as the first true light of morning fills the house, gentle and warm, it carries with it that quiet truth that does not need to be spoken, that sometimes what protects us is not what we expect, and sometimes the ones who stand closest to danger are the ones who never intended to leave. And in that stillness between